The call came in just after 2:13 a.m. A security guard at the Riverbend Industrial Complex reported something unusual near the loading docks, what he thought was a passed-out vagrant. The guard's voice cracked through dispatch, shaky but stubbornly professional. The way he described it, not moving, pale, maybe dead, told me it wasn't a sleeping drunk. When I arrived, the night was thick and unforgiving. A storm had rolled through earlier, leaving behind puddles of oily water that mirrored the orange glow of broken floodlights. The industrial park was silent, except for the hum of distant transformers and the occasional scrape of metal shifting in the wind. The body lay crumpled against a concrete wall, half in shadow, female, mid-20s, maybe early 30s, blonde hair matted with rain and something darker. Her arms were folded unnaturally, one shoe missing, her fingernails chipped with traces of neon green polish. The first thing that hit me wasn't the sight. It was the smell, sharp, metallic, mingling with the sour stench of garbage left to rot in nearby dumpsters. Death has a way of announcing itself before your eyes confirm it. She wore a black cocktail dress torn at the side, not the kind of outfit you'd expect in a desolate industrial yard after midnight. One earring was still in her ear, a small silver hoop. The other had been ripped out, leaving behind a bloody tear. That detail stuck with me. Accidental or intentional? I crouched down. Her skin was cold, her lips tinged blue. A faint bruise ringed her neck just beneath the jawline. Strangulation? Maybe. But there was also a gash on the back of her head, deep enough to expose bone. Cause of death wouldn't be clear until the autopsy, but the scene whispered violence. The guard who'd called it in hovered nearby, chain-smoking, his hands trembling. He swore he hadn't touched her. I believed him. He looked ready to vomit just standing there. The evidence techs moved in with their cameras, latex gloves snapping under the weak light. They bagged the missing shoe, found near the loading bay door. Inside her clutch, still clasped in her stiff fingers, they pulled out a cracked iPhone, a half-empty lipstick, and a receipt from a downtown nightclub called the Velvet Room, time-stamped 11:48 p.m. That receipt was the first breadcrumb. It placed her alive, dressed to impress, less than 3 hours before her body ended up in the gutter of an industrial wasteland. I stepped back, scanning the perimeter. The scene told a story, but only in fragments. Drag marks in the wet concrete suggested she hadn't collapsed here. She'd been dumped. Someone wanted her body found, but not easily. Her dress screamed nightlife. Her surroundings whispered disposal. That kind of contradiction always means something. As the coroner zipped the bag, I felt that familiar pull, the one that drags you deeper whether you want it or not. Another dead girl in a city that chews them up and spits them out. But the silver earring, the bruised neck, the nightclub receipt, they were puzzle pieces. And puzzles always have answers if you dig long enough. This was no random killing, and I knew, even then, that the lies would come faster than the truth. By sunrise, we had a name. Emily Hartwell, age 29, marketing manager for a luxury real estate firm downtown, lived alone in a mid-rise condo near the river. No children, no spouse. Parents retired to Florida years ago. Her closest family in the city was an older brother, Michael, ex-Army, now running a struggling construction business. Emily's driver's license gave us the clean, polished headshot version of her. But the world always paints a messier picture than DMV records do. The Velvet Room, where she'd last been alive, wasn't just a nightclub. It was where the city's moneyed and desperate collided in the dark. The place was infamous for its velvet curtains, overpriced cocktails, and the owner's rumored ties to organized crime. If Emily had spent her final hours there, it meant she'd stepped into a world where people disappeared without questions. Her neighbors described her as friendly, but private, the kind of woman who nodded politely in the elevator but never lingered for conversation. At work, colleagues painted her differently. Ambitious, sometimes cutthroat, the type who dressed sharper than the rest and knew it. One coworker mentioned she'd recently closed a multi-million-dollar property deal that had left others jealous. Success breeds enemies as easily as it attracts admirers. Then there was her personal life. Social media showed a curated reality. Rooftop cocktails, weekend hikes, a string of tagged photos with different men, none appearing more than once. She wasn't careless, but she wasn't settled either. That pattern can mean freedom, or it can mean secrets. Her phone was cracked, water damaged, but recoverable. Digital forensics promised answers, calls, texts, location data. But that would take days, maybe weeks. Meanwhile, we had to build the human side of her timeline. The receipt gave us our anchor, 11:48 p.m. at the Velvet Room. Witnesses there remembered her. Blonde hair, black dress, standing out in a sea of shadows. Some said she was with a man in a gray suit, tall, late 30s. Others swore she'd been alone, scrolling through her phone, waiting for someone. Stories blurred as alcohol levels rose, but a few details repeated. She argued with someone near the bar. She left in a hurry, didn't leave alone. Whoever walked out with her had become the last person to see her alive. The first circle always starts with the obvious. Michael Hartwell, brother. On paper, he was clean, but financial records hinted at debt collectors circling. A sister with money and connections could have been his lifeline, or his frustration if she refused. Ethan Cole, ex-boyfriend, a fitness trainer turned nightclub promoter. Their breakup a year ago had left him bitter. Friends claimed he still texted her late at night, begging for another chance, then lashing out when ignored. His social media was full of cryptic posts about betrayal and second chances. Marcus Varela, nightclub owner, known for shady dealings, security teams that handled problems off the books, and a network of favors owed across the city. If Emily had business with him, it wouldn't have been clean. The man in the gray suit. No ID yet. Witnesses remembered his expensive watch, slicked back hair, a presence that commanded attention. Possibly married, possibly dangerous. He hadn't been seen before, or since. Each one carried motive, opportunity, or both. The city wakes up fast after a body drops. Rumors spread, stories twist, and the truth hides under layers of convenience. Emily Hartwell wasn't just a victim. She was a mirror for the people around her. Their greed, their grudges, their quiet desperation. And the longer I stared at her photo on the caseboard, the more I felt that this wasn't about a random night gone wrong. This was personal. The morning after the discovery, the crime scene photos were already pinned to the board in our squad room. The industrial yard, the torn dress, the missing earring, the drag marks. Each detail staring back like a silent accusation. Forensics had something right away. Traces of blood under Emily's fingernails. Defensive wounds. She'd fought back. And the bruising on her neck? Consistent with manual strangulation. But the gash on the skull complicated things. One hit could have stunned her before she was strangled. Or maybe the head wound came after. Insurance to make sure she stayed down. Her phone was drying out in Tech's evidence locker, waiting for extraction. What we did have were the first swabs and prints. Latent prints on the clutch bag. Partial palm smudge on the heel of the missing shoe. DNA under her nails. Nothing matchable yet. But the clock was ticking. The first interviews gave me what I expected. Half-truths and contradictions. Michael Hartwell, the brother of the victim. He met us at his construction office, sawdust still clinging to his boots. He looked genuinely broken when we told him about Emily. But grief doesn't erase debt. His company was 3 months behind on loans. One bank had already filed notice. He swore Emily had promised to help, then backed out at the last minute. He said it with bitterness that slipped out before he caught himself. Still, he claimed he was home that night alone, watching TV. No one to vouch for him. Ethan Cole, ex-boyfriend of the victim. We found him at a downtown gym, barking orders at clients like nothing had happened. When asked about Emily, he grew defensive fast. He admitted they'd been in contact. His idea, not hers. He claimed she ignored most of his texts, but he had an alibi. He was working the door at another nightclub until 3 a.m. Security cameras might back that up. Or not. Marcus Varela, nightclub owner of the victim. Smooth. Rehearsed. The kind of man who's been questioned enough times to treat it like a performance. He remembered Emily. Said she was a good client, nothing more. He denied she argued with anyone inside. He denied even seeing her leave. His tone said he was lying, but without proof, tone means nothing. The man in the gray suit. No name, no ID yet. Witnesses described him differently. Blue tie, no tie, slick hair, short hair. Alcohol distorts memory. Still, the silver watch detail repeated. That was enough to mark him as real. He existed, which meant he mattered. By day 3, the autopsy came in. Cause of death, asphyxiation from strangulation. Blunt force trauma to the skull was serious, but not instantly fatal, which meant whoever killed her wanted it personal. Hands around her throat, watching the life leave her. That's not random. That's rage. And here's where it got worse. Toxicology showed traces of GHB in her system, the so-called club drug. Somebody had drugged her drink before she died. So now the puzzle wasn't just about who killed Emily. It was about who slipped something into her glass, why they did it, and how she ended up discarded like garbage in a forgotten industrial yard. The pieces weren't fitting yet, but they would, because they always do. Cases like this never move in a straight line. They bend, twist, and drag you through the mud before they spit out the truth. By the end of week 1, we had suspects stacked like playing cards. Every one of them could have been the killer, and every one of them had holes in their story. Before we move forward, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any twists. And if you love these dark, gripping stories, share them with your friends. Let's uncover the mysteries together. Michael Hartwell's debts were deeper than he'd admitted. A subpoenaed bank record showed not just late payments, but an attempt to liquidate part of Emily's life insurance policy. 3 weeks before she died, he claimed she'd given him permission. We couldn't ask her. Worse, a neighbor swore they saw him leave his apartment the night of the murder around midnight, wearing a hoodie and looking agitated. His story of being home alone was starting to leak. Ethan Cole's alibi at the nightclub looked solid at first. Security cameras showed him at the door, greeting guests, working the crowd, but the footage had a gap. 40 minutes missing from the feed. Technical glitch, the owner claimed, or maybe someone edited it. 40 minutes was enough time to meet Emily at the Velvet Room, slip something in her drink, and vanish with her into the night. And then came the texts. Forensics finally pulled his phone records. A message at 11:12 p.m. read, "We need to talk tonight," sent to Emily. No reply from her. The Velvet Room's owner had too many lawyers and too many cops in his pocket. His word meant nothing. But one bartender off the record told us he saw Varela talking to Emily in a corner booth. Heated, quiet, sharp movements. When we pressed for details, the bartender backpedaled. Fear rolled off him like sweat. Varela wasn't just a suspect. He was a wall we couldn't get through without someone getting crushed. We finally got a partial lead. Surveillance from a parking garage 2 blocks from the Velvet Room caught a figure matching his description. Gray suit, silver watch, walking beside Emily just after midnight. He opened the passenger door of a black BMW. She got in. The car never left the garage, at least not under that plate number. By the time we tracked it, the plates came back stolen. The trail ended in smoke, but the images didn't lie. Emily left with him, and that made him the last known person to see her alive. The deeper we pushed, the more resistance we met. A warrant for Varela's security footage got lost in processing. Ethan's missing video segment couldn't be explained, and Michael's financials, records we should have had in days, took twice as long to come through. Somebody wanted this case slowed down, buried. That's the thing about investigating murder in this city. You're never just chasing a killer. You're fighting the system that protects them. Cops on the take, judges with favors to return, politicians with secrets tucked in the dark corners of nightclubs like the Velvet Room. And all the while, Emily's face stared down from the caseboard. Frozen smile, bright eyes. A life turned into evidence tags and autopsy photos. I knew we were closing in, but which suspect would crack first? The brother drowning in debt? The ex who couldn't let go? The owner with blood on his hands and money in his pocket? Or the ghost in the gray suit, sliding through the city like smoke? The only certainty was this: someone was lying, and sooner or later the evidence would drag them into the light. The first real crack came not from witnesses, but from a machine. Forensics finally pulled usable data from Emily's phone. Despite the water damage, the recovery team extracted location pings, texts, and call logs. Most of it painted the expected picture: late-night messages, a string of unanswered calls, a few rideshare receipts. But one thread stood out. At 11:56 p.m., less than 10 minutes after buying that last drink at the Velvet Room, Emily texted her brother. The message was short, jagged. "We need to talk, urgent, meet tomorrow morning." Michael never replied. His phone records showed he didn't even open the message until 7:13 a.m., long after her body was found. Convenient or damning, depending on how you looked at it, but it wasn't just the texts. Her phone's GPS log placed her near the Riverbend Industrial Complex at 12:42 a.m., the same yard where her body was dumped, which meant she was alive when she arrived there. That changed everything. She wasn't killed elsewhere and disposed of. She was taken there, breathing, and finished off in the shadows. Then came the DNA. The swabs from beneath her fingernails hit a partial match. Not in CODIS, but in a sealed-off police file. A suspect from 2 years earlier. Bar fight, assault charge, dismissed quietly. The name Victor Hale. Victor wasn't a stranger. He was Marcus Varela's head of security at the Velvet Room. A wall of muscle with a history of violence and a reputation for handling problems the way his boss preferred. Out of sight, out of court. Suddenly, the story bent hard toward the nightclub. Ethan's 40-minute gap on the nightclub footage gnawed at me. When techs enhanced the remaining clips, they found a reflection in a mirror behind the bar. Grainy, distorted, but clear enough. Ethan wasn't at his post. He was inside, talking to Emily. His face told the story. Angry, hands cutting through the air. Her expression was tight, dismissive, like she'd heard it all before. She left minutes later, and who followed her out? Not Ethan, not Marcus. Not Michael. The reflection caught a sliver of silver on her wrist. The man in the gray suit. Parking garage footage gave us one more breadcrumb. The black BMW that Emily entered was abandoned 2 days later in a warehouse lot on the south side. Inside, techs found 2 things: a discarded champagne cork with traces of GHB, a single silver cufflink under the passenger seat, not the cheap kind, custom engraved. Initials DR. The man in the gray suit wasn't a phantom after all. He had a name, or at least the start of one. The puzzle pieces were aligning. Emily's text to her brother suggested family tension. Ethan's missing minutes proved he confronted her that night. Marcus's enforcer had his DNA under her nails. And now a cufflink pointing toward a new, unnamed player, someone polished, wealthy, and careful enough to disappear behind stolen plates in a vanishing car. But the key was this: Emily hadn't just stumbled into danger. She'd been pulled into it, deliberately. And the closer we got, the clearer it became. This wasn't about a random killing in a nightclub shadow. This was about money, power, and betrayal buried deep under velvet curtains and false alibis. The break had come, but breaks don't end cases. They blow them wide open. The cufflink was the first elegant thing in a case full of dirt. Heavy, silver-plated, engraved with the initials DR. It didn't belong in a rust-stained warehouse lot, abandoned under a rotting car seat. It belonged to someone who had money, taste, and no business lurking in industrial shadows. We ran every jeweler in the city who specialized in custom work. By midweek, one came back with a hit. The cufflink had been part of a bespoke set, commissioned 18 months earlier by Daniel Rains. The name landed like a punch. Rains was a corporate attorney, mid-40s, married into old money. He made his career defending people like Marcus Varela, white-collar criminals, nightclub owners, politicians with dirty hands. He was polished, untouchable, and he knew it. His connections ran deep. The kind of man who could make evidence vanish and witnesses choke on their own testimony. Which begged the question, what was Emily Hartwell doing in his car at midnight? Before we could reach Raines, the Victor Hale lead cracked open. Forensics put his DNA under Emily's fingernails beyond doubt. When we dragged him into interrogation, his arrogance didn't last. Hours of silence gave way to the truth in fragments. He admitted to seeing Emily at the Velvet Room, said she caused a scene with Varela, demanded something that wasn't hers. When pressed, he claimed he followed her out, not to hurt her, but to make sure she left quietly. But when confronted with the DNA, he stumbled. Finally, he caved halfway. He admitted Emily scratched him when he tried to block her exit. His version was simple. She left with a suit, not a regular, and Hale swore that was the last he saw of her. It was enough to clear him of the kill, but not of involvement. He'd touched her. He'd tried to control her. He wasn't the end game, but he was part of the chain. Meanwhile, Michael's alibi disintegrated further. Cell tower data placed his phone within a mile of the Velvet Room around midnight. He swore he didn't remember leaving his apartment, just went for a drive to clear my head. Convenient amnesia. The money trail made it worse. Investigators found recent transfers from Emily's account to his. Large, round numbers marked as loans. She had been bailing him out, at least until she stopped. Did that rejection push him over the edge? Or was he just another parasite feeding off her, not the one who killed her? Ethan Cole's missing 40 minutes came back into focus with the enhanced footage. He had confronted Emily. His texts reeked of desperation. He wanted her back. She wanted nothing to do with him. When we pressed him, he snapped, shoved the table, cursed, blamed the rich assholes who circled Emily like vultures. He admitted he hated seeing her with other men. Admitted he followed her out once before, but he swore he didn't touch her that night. The problem was obsession doesn't vanish. It festers. An obsession wrapped in rejection can kill. Then there was Daniel Raines. The cufflink, the BMW, the last known companion. His presence turned the case from street-level grime to high-rise corruption. When we requested to interview him, his lawyers stalled. When we pushed for a warrant, the paperwork hit brick walls. Judges hesitated. Calls went unanswered. Someone wanted Raines insulated. But insulation isn't innocence, because Emily wasn't just unlucky, she was targeted. Dragged from velvet-lit nightclubs into concrete wastelands. Her killer wasn't just violent, they were deliberate. And the longer we chased the trail, the clearer it became. Emily Hartwell hadn't been murdered in a vacuum. She'd been executed inside a web of power, greed, and betrayal. And that web was starting to fray. Daniel Raines was the kind of man who never sweat, even under the lights. When we finally got him in for questioning, after burning through more paperwork and favors than I care to count, he showed up in a tailored navy suit, not a wrinkle on him. His cufflinks? Gold this time. The silver pair, he claimed, had been misplaced months ago. He admitted knowing Emily Hartwell, but only in passing. A professional acquaintance, he called her, the word slippery as oil. He denied seeing her at the Velvet Room, denied owning a black BMW, denied leaving his wife's charity gala that night, where half the city's elite swore he'd been shaking hands and sipping champagne. An airtight alibi if you believed it, but airtight only works if the seams don't show. The parking garage footage was our seam. The grainy shot of Emily stepping into the BMW with the man in the gray suit. Same height, same build, same silver watch Raines was known for. When we laid the image in front of him, his jaw tightened just for a second. Then he leaned back, smirked, and asked for his lawyer. The cufflink under the passenger seat wasn't just a mistake. It was a crack in the armor of a man who never made mistakes. While Raines danced behind lawyers, the Velvet Room gave us another layer. That bartender we'd leaned on? He cracked. Said Emily confronted Varela that night about a deal gone wrong. Not money, not drugs. Property. Emily, the real estate shark, had apparently brokered a side deal, one involving Varela and, according to the bartender, some high society lawyer. She was supposed to get a cut. Instead, she got stiffed. And she wasn't the kind of woman to let it go. So she showed up, demanded answers, and threatened to expose them both. Now the picture started forming. Emily had leverage, and leverage is dangerous currency. Each suspect circled closer to her final hours. Michael needed her money and may have resented how she held it over him. Ethan couldn't let go, consumed by jealousy and rejection. Varela saw her as a threat to his business if she talked. Raines, if the cufflink and footage held, was the man who took her last ride. The toxicology results deepened the cut. GHB in her drink didn't scream heat of the moment. It screamed premeditation. Somebody planned to disarm her, silence her, and remove her. And the more we dug, the more the system resisted. Warrants delayed, evidence challenged. One of our informants found beaten in an alley. A warning, the kind you don't misinterpret. But Emily Hartwell wasn't going to be another cold file. Not if I had to tear through every rotten layer of this city to nail the truth. The net was tightening, and when it closes, someone always drowns. The case had been circling itself for weeks. Every lead bled into another. Every suspect had motive, but no clean line to the weapon. I was running out of patience, and worse, the department was running out of faith. But something kept gnawing at me. The club's surveillance gaps. Hours missing. Footage wiped with surgical precision. Too neat, too professional. Someone with access. Someone with reason. We baited the trap. I requested ingested the raw hard drives from the club's security vendor, bypassing the club's own IT manager. On one of the drives, buried under layers of deleted sectors, was a partial recovery of the erased night. Not clear video, just fragments. A shadow passing, the timestamp showing 2:12 a.m., the exact window we'd been blind to. Whoever it was had entered the service corridor near the back entrance. Reviewing the keycard logs, only one person had accessed that area that night, Darren Cross, the operations manager, whose involvement had remained unmentioned until now. I didn't go straight at him. Instead, I reopened his financials, months of clean books, until one wire transfer surfaced. $60,000 funneled through a shell company tied to a competitor nightclub. Payoff money. When we finally pulled him in, he cracked faster than I expected. Not a cold-blooded killer's confession, more a man collapsing under the weight of his own stupidity. He admitted he was in debt, desperate, and had struck a deal to sabotage the victim's reputation by feeding dirt to rivals. But the night of the murder, things spiraled. He confronted the victim in that back corridor, demanding hush money. Words escalated. The victim threatened to expose Darren's theft. Darren panicked. The knife, he said, wasn't premeditated. It was in his bag from handling stock shipments. One thrust, deep and final. The forensic chain backed him up. The knife, recovered from the club's dumpster, still bore the victim's DNA and latent prints matching Darren's palm ridge. The smear pattern matched his story of holding it once, then tossing it. Still, panic didn't erase guilt. Darren tried to scrub the footage, thought he was clever. But technology leaves traces, always. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Second-degree murder, 25 to life. When the verdict came down, the family cried relief. But for me, it wasn't triumph. It was exhaustion. Another man dead, another man caged. Another web of greed and desperation pulling everyone down. I poured myself a stale coffee that night, staring at the rain streaking my office window. Justice, sure, but clean endings don't exist in this work. Just scars, shuffled papers, and another file waiting on my desk. If this kept you hooked, the next case on your screen will pull you even deeper into the shadows. Click the icon on your screen to continue your ride. The next story is waiting.